Bienvenidos. ¿De dónde vas? What's the rest of it, Solomon?
Yo hecho en México
I don't think that's what they say.
y para mi trabajo yo pisco piñones y también yo ando pepenando ink.
Did we ever come up with a topic?
Yeah, Jed's gonna tell us how to get girls.
No. That's not, we're editing this out. But look, we're going to ask Judd. Okay, hold on. Restart. Solomon, hold on.
I just want to state for the record, okay? This is my second podcast, so I pretty much know what I'm doing.
Okay, here we are. Las Cruces, New Mexico. We're in Judd's living room. We have Salomon LeBaron.
Jasmine's house.
Jasmine's house. We have Salomon LeBaron and Judd Soulsby. How you doing?
Doing great.
That's good. Solomon, what was our question for Judd?
I want to know how to get girls.
Solomon wants...
No, that sounds stupid, but hear me out, okay? Judd mentioned earlier that he could tell people how to get girls. And I would like to hear wisdom from the experienced on how it's done and compare it to how I did it just a few years ago when I was still in the dating life.
Okay, to clarify, earlier Judd gave us a range of topics that he had become knowledgeable in over the course of his years of attempting to attain mastery. And getting girls was one of like 20 topics, and me and Solomon instantly perked up and we're like, wait, hold on. We already have girls, but just so we're on the same page, how do we get girls theoretically? Obviously, we have no interest in getting girls, but for all the young wild bucks out there that are interested in getting girls, what's the trick?
Gil, we have no interest in acting on getting girls.
Okay. Well, I'll buy it.
There's two ways to do it. One is to be successful, be an upstanding citizen, comb your hair, go to the gym, do all the things that you might have heard about a million times. And the more things you acquire, the higher up the ladder you are, the more, the girls will be chasing you around. But that's the hard way to do it. And it might take a lifetime to get to a point. It might take 5 years to get to a point where you feel like you can go out with a higher caliber of people, and you just keep going and going, and there's kind of no end to it. But to cheat and
to cheat the system,
not
on your wife. We're talking
not
about.
Because you have 25 hectares of pecan trees versus somebody who has 100 versus somebody who has ocho, like myself. But to trick the system, unfortunately, women are attracted to men that aren't jumping up on a pedestal and saying, "Look at me, look at me." They're more attracted to men that aren't even nice to them.
Yeah, I've noticed that. They always say nice guys finish last, and women are attracted to jerks, which obviously isn't true, but there is obviously some truth to it.
There's a lot of truth to it.
What's up with that? And you've explained this to me in the past, but why is it that women are attracted to jerks?
To read a book and not listen to me, like regurgitate half of the book, but the book is called... it looks like the Holy Bible. It's black and it's got gold leaf pages on it, but it's called The Game by Neil Strauss. Read it, buy it. Don't even listen to the podcast if that's the subject, because that's a better explanation. But basically, it's painful to read. It's painful to believe. It's hard to imagine, but I was single most of my life, and I was in the dating pool for a lot of years, 20 years at least. And there would be years where I would go out with a lot of beautiful girls, and there'd be years where I would keep to myself. Yeah. But I found out of years of trial and error, and then when I finally read this book, it dawned on me what my errors were.
Yeah.
And I could go back in my mind and remember, oh yeah, that girl was really interested in me until I bought her flowers, or that girl was really interested in me until I fill in the blank. But it's very unfortunate that women actually are attracted to guys that can portray that they're not interested in them.
Yeah.
We're obviously very interested in women, especially if there's somebody that you want to go out with. You're very interested in her.
Yeah.
The trick is to not let her know that.
Mm-hmm.
And the book goes over in great detail how to not let her know that you're interested.
Yeah.
And you basically have 30 seconds to establish 2 or 3 things. 1, you're leaving. 2, you're not interested in them. And 3, here's why. So you basically have 30 seconds when you walk into a conversation, think, oh, wow, I hope this girl shows up to the fairs. She's coming in from Utah. She's going to be in the fairs, and she's so pretty, and I just really hope to see her on the carnival ride, and I'm going to talk to her. When you do run into her, you have 30 seconds to establish that you're leaving, 30 seconds to establish that you're not interested in her, and 30 seconds to establish that there might be something wrong with her.
Jesus.
Not in a bad way. Not like I don't like your parents or I don't like your teeth or whatever, but just 30 seconds to establish that you're not necessarily interested in her.
So what would be an example of something that's wrong with her? Also, just real quick, Judd, you got to keep the microphone about a fist. No, it's the right distance, about a fist, but you got to, when you turn sideways and talk, that makes the audio is just going to be soft, so people have a hard time hearing you.
Okay.
So put the microphone in your dominant hand.
Got it.
Because you're going to have an easier time.
Because I have a beer in my weak hand.
Yeah, exactly.
Very good.
Anyways, so what are examples of things that would make a girl feel like, hey, there's something wrong with me?
Not even necessarily wrong, just maybe something like you have something on your shirt, or there's where did you find those shoes, or just anything that isn't, oh my God, you're brilliant, oh my God, you're beautiful, which is what our tendency is. Our tendency when we're attracted to somebody is to just sit there and worship them, and the girls that are very pretty, they're highly sought after, everywhere they go, they're getting attacked by 10 guys. 10 people are chasing them around. They could go to the gas station. They could go anywhere, and there's going to be people telling them that they're pretty, telling them that they're smart, telling them that all this stuff, and all they want to do is be left alone, because all day long they're getting hit on. So if you're the only person in the room that isn't actively pursuing them, they're wondering, what does this person have that makes them not interested in me?
Yeah.
And you don't have to be mean. You don't have to be disrespectful or anything of that nature, but you have to make it clear to them that you're not trying to sit there and talk to them for 5 hours straight, that you're not going to chase them around, that you're not. It's all in the book.
So here's the thing. I read the book about, I don't know, a year and a half, 2 years ago, just on a whim. It came up. It was free on YouTube. I don't even think it was the whole book. It was like 3.5 hours of it, but it's a short book, so it was most of it. And you told me to read that book when I was like 18, and thank God I didn't, because I'd probably have an STD by now if I did. I was mostly a nice guy, but it's funny reading that book. I was like, oh, that's why all the girls that I was ever not interested in were really into me, and all the girls I was super interested in I couldn't talk to.
Correct.
It just didn't work out with. But
and it's unfortunate that it's that way, because when you're truly interested in somebody, you should just be able to come up and say, look, I'm interested in you. I think you're pretty. I like everything about you. And the girls should respond positively, but they typically turn around and run and go chase somebody who's mean to them.
But when I read it, because I'm married, obviously, and I'm not interested in playing the game. First of all, Neil Strauss, I think you'd probably do a better job, no bullshit, writing this book than Neil Strauss, because Neil Strauss is he's kind of a slimy asshole. He really is. He's not a great guy, but the book makes sense. And when I read it, I was like, okay, I'm probably going to make all my daughters read this. Like, I won't let my sons read it, but I'll let my daughters read it, because it's like they need to understand, like, psychologically. And it's funny because I had a friend in college. Remember Matt Saul?
Yeah, I hated that douchebag.
Okay, well,
he would literally walk into our door without knocking, because he felt so comfortable, and walk straight into our room that we shared. and I'd literally grab him and say, "Get the hell out of my house. Go knock and I might let you in."
Well, Matt had I swear to you, this guy had a different girl. He had like 3 different girls a week for the entire semester that we shared. We're basically living on the same floor. It was crazy. And this guy he had the worst posture. He just kind of a slimy little dude. Not
He
super
was
good
short
looking.
and wasn't even good looking.
Addicted to amphetamines, and holy cow, he was just rolling around with 10s, 9s, 10s, 11s, just like the most beautiful girls you'd ever seen. And and it's funny because I asked him one time, I was like, how is it that you're literally with this many women? Like, this is crazy. And he's like hanging out with me because I was, better looking, and we go places, and I'd get attention. But he would figure out how to actually reel him in. You know what I'm saying? But he told me he had like a little, I don't know how many steps. It was like 5 steps, 10 steps, whatever. But he'd go down the line of these steps, and by the end of these 10 steps, he'd have the girl's number, and he was set up to go on a date with her either that night or the next night. Every single time, and he said it worked, 7 out of 10 times, which is crazy, with any girl he ever walked up to. And he followed the same rules that you're describing, but his were a little bit different. He tried and find something in common with them. But anyways, the point is that I think you're right, and if you understand the psychology of what makes men attractive to women, a lot of it is that women are naturally the selectors. They decide who they want to propagate genes with, and they have to think that they have to think they're marrying up. They have to think they're mating up with somebody.
Okay, that's what I want to hear about. You're married now. You've been dating my sister for 7 years or something like that? 5?
Dating?
Well, since you started dating.
Yes, I've been with her for 6+ years for sure.
Okay. It's my understanding that you guys decided to date on your first encounter when you sat down at that restaurant.
100% correct.
How did that encounter go? And did this same mentality of you got to make her know that you're not interested and let her know you got to be somewhere? How did that play into your first date with Jasmine?
First of all, it wasn't a first date. It was specifically set up because she wanted to meet the people that I hang out with. And so what I did is I had no idea how old she was, but I knew she was younger than me. So I had some friends that were younger than me that were single, that were nice, and I brought them with me. And the premise of the conversation was so that Jasmine could meet people. But by definition, I was doing to her, not because I was trying to, but I was proving that I wasn't interested because I was bringing other people, trying to introduce her to other people, and I was actually subconsciously I wasn't trying to date my wife. I was trying to introduce her to other people. And when we had our conversations, it started dawning on me that I really liked her a lot because she was exactly like the kind of person that I wanted to be around.
Yeah.
But where we met, I thought she was in her early 20s, and I still thought she was too young to be dating me, but I was still interested in her. But in retrospect, she was sitting there at this table, and I wasn't at all hitting on her in any way, shape, or form. I was trying to introduce her to some younger people, and she was getting hit on by everybody in the room, including these younger people at the table. And she was repelled by them, just like girls are.
So...
And I wasn't at all trying to hit on her at all. And by not hitting on her, I think it made her more interested in me. And by the end of the we were sitting there drinking coffee or whatever for a few hours and talking. And the more we talked, the more I realized, wow, this girl is exactly the kind of person that I want to be around, that I really like. I like everything that she had to say.
So from the get-go, it wasn't a date. You established you weren't interested.
Correct.
So however long it was into the conversation, it dawns on you, I'm actually interested in this girl.
Correct.
How does your game change at that point?
I had already done everything that needed to be done, and I always did when I entered into a room to make sure the girls didn't think that I was chasing after them. It had become just a habit.
So at this point, you've done it so many times for so many years, you just did it naturally without even thinking that I want to approach this girl.
I didn't want to approach her because we had just met.
Yeah.
I had no idea who she was or anything like that. I knew that she was related to somebody that I knew, but beyond that, I didn't know LeBarons back then, etc.
Let me ask you a little bit of a different question.
Okay.
Do the same rules that apply to, let's just say, higher status women, do the same rules apply to higher status business contacts? Like if you're going to go in and do a deal with somebody worth, let's just say, $300 million, or do you also want to treat it kind of like a girl that you're interested in?
Well, I guess it would be a little bit different. Men operate completely differently.
Yeah.
Men, in fact, appreciate it when you've read up on them, when you know a little bit about them, when you know what they're doing, when you prove to them that you're doing the back work or the homework or whatever.
Yeah.
And women, unfortunately, and I agree with what Gilbert said, that I wouldn't want my son to read this book necessarily because he might get an STD.
Yeah.
But I would certainly want my daughter to read this book. As painful as it is to read, I would want my daughter to read it, because all women, when they're young, and it happens time and time and time again, they're always attracted to the big idiot with a tattoo on his eyelids, the worst guy in the room, the big loser or whatever. Wonderful women, a lot of times in high school, want to date some loser. And it's because the loser doesn't want to talk. He doesn't want to reveal. He doesn't have 8 hectares. He doesn't have 100 hectares. He doesn't want to talk about it. He wants to be secretive and mysterious because he has nothing to offer. And because he has nothing to offer, he's not bragging about himself. He's not talking about himself.
Gotcha.
And that's the problem, is women think that when you're saying something about yourself positively, that you're bragging about yourself.
But women do also go for guys that brag and are cocky and arrogant. Probably not. I mean, I don't know what the actual numbers are, but you do see women with douchebags that like to flaunt it.
They're cocky, yes.
Yeah.
Cocky.
So because there's guys that'll go out and rent a Lamborghini and get a fake Rolex and whatever else.
Cockiness works.
So, do you think there's anything? And obviously, Neil Strauss is kind of a pig, and I wasn't a big fan of the whole group of people he put together, and the way he ran his little his pickup community
At all.
But do you think there's anything that he missed? Do you think there's would you add anything to what he wrote, or would you say that there's anything that he completely...
Absolutely. I would say that the caliber of people that he was chasing was barflies by and large.
Yeah.
And that's not going to necessarily work at a Mormon church in LeBaron.
Yeah.
But he was picking up barflies.
So, but
yes.
But for just breaking the ice, just trying to meet women wherever you're at, just trying to break the ice, it's a good method to break the ice. But for actually a long-term sustainable relationship, you got to read at least a couple more books.
You got to read a lot of books.
But
if you're just talking about what's the easiest way to get a girl interested in you, you couldn't possibly understand it unless you read that book. I did a lot of studies. I ran studies. I got a degree in psychology. I took a lot of classes on human sexual attractiveness. Masters and Johnson's gets quoted the most. Vic Johnston from New Mexico State University, where I went, gets quoted probably second or third most of all the studies they do, and I ran his studies. I was his little lab rat undergraduate kid that did the test. But there's a whole lot of knowledge that you can get. And you mentioned cockiness earlier. In every species, the male of the species is supposed to be the most flamboyant. So the deer have the big antlers, the birds have the bright feathers. In our species, the cocky, arrogant people were always on display. They were always the ones that were the most dressed up, and they always had the most women chasing them around. And we've been kind of neutered and told to wear, you know, a t-shirt and a pair of jeans and tennis shoes and keep our heads down. But it wasn't too many hundred years ago, and the guy that had the most bones around his neck and the wildest hairdo and the brightest colors was the guy that ran the village or the town or whatever.
Yeah.
I don't care what culture you want to study. You could almost look at a group of people without hearing them speak and just see how the man was dressed, and you could tell who the chief was, so to speak.
Okay.
Because he was the one that was the most cocky visually. He didn't have to necessarily be cocky with his mouth. He didn't have to be a loudmouth, but his clothing, what he wore. And so girls say, well, I like a man that's dressed up nicely. They also like a man that's dressed up like a rock star or like a total degenerate loser if they're colorful enough.
Sure.
And it's unfortunate. And that's not, I don't want my daughter to be attracted to guys like that.
What other questions you got, Saul?
So you see this portrayed in movies, and it's kind of a stereotype, but does it really make a difference if you walk into a bar by yourself, seeking
Absolutely.
out to get a girl, and you have this 5-step program or these 3 things in mind that you have to establish within 30 seconds, versus if you show up with a group of guys that are your wingmen? And my understanding is that women will think you're more attractive if you're surrounded by other men that are attractive and other peers.
100% correct.
What's the psychology behind that?
Women are terrified of being socially ostracized. So women are brought up to understand that the in group, the in clique is where they want to be. No woman wants to just sit on a chair by herself. There's something ingrained in them that they have to be around other women. They have to be surrounded by women. And then they all understand, well, this is the cool group. This is the group I want to be in. They try to join that group. If they're not good enough to get in that group, they make their own group, and so on down the line. And their whole life is a painful experience of being rejected or not, their whole life. And to see a poor, lonely man who might be the most interesting person in the world walking into a bar or a church or in anything, walking in all by himself with nobody around him, the women immediately assume that must be the person who couldn't even find a group even further down the ladder. They're not only are they not a part of this great group of wonderful, beautiful men that are successful, they're also not a part of another group or another group or another group. This poor person can't even find a group. He must be somewhere down below the sewer level. And so when you walk in by yourself anywhere, that's the immediate assumption that you would get from strangers, from women. Men don't necessarily see that. They might think, well, this guy's pretty neat. I've never seen him before. He might have come in off, from anywhere. He might have a great story to tell. Women don't see it that way. They see you as a socially awkward loser.
Here's my next question
Yes.
to piggyback off of that. Does it make a difference when you walk into an establishment surrounded by your buds, other men, versus you walk into an establishment with other women?
Both of them are useful. If you want women to think that you're interesting, both of them are important.
Because it seems like the one guy that's getting attention from several women, the other women will notice that, and they'll be more interested in that person, and then all the other women around them will notice, and you walk into any establishment and one person's getting all the attention because it kind of just snowballed effect into he got attention from one girl to 2 girls to 3 to now everyone in the room's interested in him, and the other 10 guys get no attention.
100% correct. And if you wanted to have a handicap, you would want to walk in with a very socially awkward person or a very socially awkward male or female. That would be a handicap. And if you wanted to have like a couple extra points right off the bat, you would try to find a beautiful woman that nobody knows to walk into that room where everybody kind of knows everybody, whatever that room is. But if you walk in with a woman that's absolutely beautiful, that's fun, that's interesting, and she might be your sister, she might be your cousin, she might be your friend, but nobody's ever seen this person. She's just really, really, really good looking, really nice, really interesting, and she's talking to you. Immediately, you got a green light from all the people that are secretly watching and pointing and wondering who you are or where you're from or what you're doing.
But that's just not the women that notice that. Other men
Correct.
will give you more attention too. Like, hey, this man has a beautiful woman. I don't know if she's his mom, his sister, his cousin. She's with him. She clearly desires him for some reason.
Correct.
He's probably wealthy. I wonder what he does and if we could do business together.
Correct.
Judd, you
Yes.
got to put that mic in front of your face if you want
Correct.
to. Yeah, there you go.
Correct.
Hold it in your other hand. I think you're going to do
I
better.
actually notice this a lot when we go swing dancing, Gilbert, up in Salt Lake, Provo area. I always go swing dancing with my cousins.
Yeah.
My cousins are beautiful.
Yeah.
And when I walk in, maybe it's me and one other guy and 4 girls.
Yeah.
And we immediately start dancing with those girls. And I'll have girls come up and ask me to dance. You know, they'll sit there and wait forever and hope that I ask them, and they don't. But they want to come dance with me, and they'll just, get the balls to come dance me. And I'll have other guys that I don't even know that are interested in the woman that I'm with try to come be buds with me and get to know me and introduce themselves. And we tend to get a lot more attention
As a group
than
versus
everybody else
coming in
when
on
you
your own.
walk in with 6 beautiful girls that are all your cousins and nobody else knows that.
Correct.
Interesting. So on the business side of it, the flip, because that's all I really am interested in, and honestly, I'm sure that there's somebody's going to take a lot.
I
out of
have
this
got a
conversation.
lot of business partners.
If you're trying to like say your first approach with somebody that hey, whatever the dollar number, whatever they run a business, but you want to make a good impression of them because you want to develop them as a business contact. What's like, do you have like a 3-step program for approaching somebody with a net worth that's like 10 times your net worth?
Those people are hard to find now for me. When I was younger, everybody had 10 times more money than me. Now there's not as many people that have 10 times more money than me, but I spend a lot of time with people that have 100 times more money than me, even today.
Well, maybe a better way to rephrase this then, what do you look for when people approach you? Say me coming to you. What would you look at in a
I'll
guy?
do it both ways. I'll answer that question first. What would I look for in a new young business partner?
What establishes a young man, as being a valuable person, like right off the bat?
The same credentials that people saw when they saw me when I was 20 years old and I was younger. And I always wanted to surround myself by people that were further up the ladder than me. And I remember many times people that are worth 10, 20, 50, $100 million looking at me and saying, I would trade my old life with you right now if I could push a button and be where you are at 25. And I would argue with them and I would say, that's crazy. Why would you want to do that? And they said, because you enjoy the quest, you enjoy the fun of building wealth, you're interested in it, you're adamant about it, and that's all it takes. And if you can establish that's what you're interested in doing, that you're interested in building wealth, and you're not lazy, and you're honest, a lot of people that are higher up the ladder will try to teach you, because when you're further up the ladder, nothing would make you happier than for all of your younger friends to beat you. I'm not a selfish person. I don't sit here and think, boy, I hope nobody hears what I did and becomes a multimillionaire. I'm barely a multimillionaire. I'm by no means rich, but I have a lot of friends that are rich. Mm-hmm. I have friends that are worth $500 million. I have friends that are worth hundreds of millions of dollars. And I got lots of friends that they're in that category. I have friends that make 6 figures a day and consistently do. And I spent thousands of hours with them, and I've learned a lot. And what they look for is somebody that's willing to listen, somebody that's willing to learn, somebody that's done the homework. And nobody likes liars. Nobody likes people that won't look you in the eye. Nobody likes people that are trying to steal from you in any way, shape, or form. And if you have like a little secret that made your money, you're not necessarily going to want to teach it to other people. But by and large, the biggest lesson in wealth is you have 2 jobs. You have a job that you get a paycheck from or that you earn money with, whether you're selling pine nuts or you're working on a farm or you're washing cars, it doesn't matter. You have a job. And then you have money that's earned from that job. You take that money and you invest it. And all businessmen are interested in talking about their investments, unless it's like some little secret thing that they don't want anybody else to know about. And you have to determine that. You have to determine if somebody's talking about stocks, anybody can buy stocks. In fact, if somebody likes a stock and they mention it to their friends and all their friends go and buy it, the stock actually goes up in price. Sure. So it doesn't hurt to tell somebody a stock secret. It might hurt to tell somebody that you're going to put a farm in somewhere where there's only so many gallons of water, and you don't want everybody to be putting a farm in right next door to you because there's a finite amount of water, or whatever the situation is. So some secrets people don't want you to hear. Some secrets people do want you to hear. And you need to be smart enough to know that going into the conversation. You need to put yourself in their shoes and ask yourself, does this person want somebody else knowing their business secrets? Mm-hmm. If the answer is yes, then you want to ask a bunch of questions. You want to show that you're smart enough to be in the conversation, that you've done the homework. They'll love you for it.
Okay.
If you're stepping on somebody's toes and say, where's the gold buried in the canyon? Because I got a wheelbarrow and I want to go steal some.
Yeah.
They're not going to be in a big hurry to tell you where the gold's buried up the canyon if they're a gold miner.
So would you say out of the majority of the wealthy people you know, and I kind of already know the answer to this question because you told me, but the majority of people that have made it, they're in the second half of their life. Most of these people, would you say they're willing, or even they would like to talk about their success, or is it would you say it's rude for young people to go up and ask them a bunch of questions?
I think they want to talk about it, and they don't want to throw their pearls before a swine, and they don't want to talk to somebody who's not interested, or somebody who's not prepared to hear it, or somebody who, quite frankly, is flippant about it. Mm-hmm. But if they're extremely successful and you're genuinely interested in repeating their success, they're usually genuinely interested in telling you what it takes to get there. If the money was given to them by their great uncle, they're not going to be able to tell you too much about it.
Yeah. Other than it shows up in their bank account every month.
If they did it themselves in one generation, you're standing in front of somebody who's truly worth listening to.
And probably wants to share. If you can create similarities. If they throw a little test question past you and you get the answer right, they know that you've done your homework. Unless they're a narcissist, unless they're a me,
alpha male kind of a person. Most people, by and large, would be happy to see a young person that they know become more successful than them.
But I know that's true because I've seen it in my life growing up as a 15, 16, 17-year-old. My mother taught me incredible work ethic. And, I had many opportunities to learn many different trades. I went to Doñana Community College over here and learned how to weld. And, I went to Sun Grow out there in Deming and learned how to do hydroponics. And all these 40, 50-year-old men, 60-year-olds, that see my ambition and that see me putting the hard work in and that can tell I'm smart enough to be a part of the conversation, they've done nothing but give me every resource they possibly can and knowledge to help me grow in that field because it's satisfying. It's, fulfilling to see younger people take on that knowledge and do something with it.
Absolutely.
And I'm the same way with my kid. I'm 26-year-old young buck that, doesn't know that much about the world. But what I do know and what I have experienced, when I can share that with my kid and see her take on that knowledge and do something with it, even if it's, learning how to freaking grab a stick and go beat somebody with it. I taught her that, and, I'm excited to see her do it.
It's a great lesson. We could talk about fighting on the next subject.
Yeah.
What do you have for us on fighting? I'm not into fighting, but give me a little direction. I'll come up with a question.
Much like Solomon said, he taught his daughter how to hit with a stick, but most people walk their whole lives and they get into a fight or two or an argument or two or a wrestling match or two or five or whatever. And if you get a stopwatch out and you time the amount of time that you've actually been in a fight or a wrestling match with your friends from high school or your classmates or your enemies or whatever, if you actually put a stopwatch on it, most full-grown men, middle-aged men, they're lucky if they can add 3 or 4 true minutes of fighting in their life. Mm-hmm. Total time.
Sure.
5 seconds here, 7 seconds there. This guy threw me in the ground and, rubbed his elbow on my hair and embarrassed me or whatever the deal is. Or they gave me a bloody nose or whatever. When you add it all up, the huge majority of men on the planet that walk on the planet that are middle-aged like myself, 5 minutes is a pretty high number.
It is, yeah.
To be in a real fight. And so if you were to throw your car keys to your brand new truck to a person who had driven for 5 minutes, it might be a little scary. You might think, oh my gosh, they're going to wreck my car. They're going to screw it up. They're going to wreck my truck. Because they've only driven for 5 minutes and they're not a good driver. And I don't care who you talk to, no 16-year-old is a good driver. They're just learning how to drive, and they drive all year, and they're still not that good at it. By the time they're 20, they might be a little more competent. By the time they're 40, they might be a really good driver, but you're talking about thousands of hours of driving. So if you think you're a good fighter because you're big, or you think you're a good fighter because you took some wrestling classes for a few hours or whatever. If you really want to be a good fighter, then that's what you need to do. You need to practice. And you need to practice, and you need to take classes, and you need to put in the time, and you need to go down the rabbit hole. And if you're willing to do that, and I've done it a lot, and you're willing to do it, 2 things will become clear to you. 1, you're not that good of a fighter when you started. You're not even a good fighter when you've been doing it for 500 hours.
Really?
Really. But when you put in thousands of hours fighting, you're good at it.
You think that obviously translates to a lot of things in life, is it's just pretty much
everything.
Putting in the time.
That's right.
Good deal. Saul, we should probably wrap this up because our wives will be here soon. You have anything to add?
No. I was hoping to get all the secrets to woo a woman case I ever had to.
Was there anything else? Did we miss anything else on
There
that?
was one thing,
In case
one
you
question
ever
I
have
had
to
for Jed.
disrespect.
Going back to getting women.
Oh, I'm listening.
So recently, there's someone in our family who shall not be named, who was recently here in Las Cruces, New Mexico, who was whooped over a woman, and he's like a 19-year-old punk. His name's
one of the best men
my-
I've ever met.
One
One of the
my
best
favorite
men we
One
ever
of the
met.
best men I've ever met. I know.
okay. So he's whooped over this girl, and she's just not giving him attention. And, you know, I heard the chismes from Jasmine, how you guys put him on the straight and narrow and said, this is how you be an asshole to her. I just want to hear from
no.
Judd's own mouth how that went down.
Well, first of all, I would never want him to be an asshole to anybody, but I did tell him clearly that the more you chase somebody, the faster they run.
Judd the mic.
The more you chase somebody, the faster they run. I told Jackson that clearly, and I tried to give him a few pointers so that he wouldn't smother the poor girl. And I think Jackson would be the absolute epitome of a good choice for my daughter or somebody else's daughter. I think he's a fine young man.
Oh, without a doubt.
And unfortunately, when a fine young man is chasing a woman, she's chasing the guy who isn't chasing her. And when I listened to Jackson, he was explaining, the circumstances, and sure enough, that was the circumstances. And he felt like he was doing well with her for a short period of time, and during that period of time, he probably told her that she was pretty, probably told her that she was all kinds of nice things, and she probably started looking over her shoulder for somebody who wouldn't be so nice to her. And it was a shame, but it's a painful lesson because I've done it myself.
Okay, this is the way Jasmine put it to me. Jackson, when she sends you Snapchats, don't look at them.
Correct.
Stupid.
Correct.
Don't
Wait a few hours.
Correct. Don't seem so interested, because if you can quit acting like you're interested, she'll start wondering, why is this one person on the planet not interested in me? Because beautiful women, whether they're younger, older, whatever, by and large spend their whole lives running from men that are chasing them. And they tend to run towards men that aren't smothering them.
That makes sense, because another person that shall not be named in the family is always telling me, he's like, yeah, when you're married, women chase you like crazy. It seems like every woman wants you. And then as soon as, and not that he's ever been divorced, but he knows from his buddies that, hey, once you get divorced, it seems like all that attention you got when you're married dries up. And I think that probably the reason that is because and I noticed this when I got married, it seems like I got married and instantly I became like the freaking magnet for female attention. I was weird, and I think a lot of it just stemmed back to the fact that I was just like off the market, not interested. Oh, you want to chat and be friends? Hey, whatever, we'll chat and be friends. I don't care, but I'm not here for your entertainment. You're just a gal that happens to be in front of me at the moment and wants to chat, but I'm not getting your number. We don't have any business together. And I think that, that's probably why, is once you're back on the market, if you do get a divorce or whatever, that's why a lot of that dries up, because suddenly your attitude about the women around you changes. And I think that, ties into what you're saying pretty well.
That's interesting, is in the 3 years that I've been married, I can't think of a single moment where I felt like I had excessive female attention other than the attention I got from my wife. Like, I don't know if I'm just not that desirable or that attractive or that wealthy.
We don't know either, Solomon.
But I can't think of a time when I was like, holy crap, I've gotten so much more attention ever since I got married.
I don't know.
But I don't spend that much time with hardly anybody except for my wife since I've been married.
Me either.
Even my friends, my close friends, my family, I'll see them on occasions. I'll call my buddies every once in a while, but I spend most of my time with my wife. Maybe if I spent more time hanging out in bars I'll get a lot more attention. I'll have to try this out for a week and see if it holds true.
I don't know. Maybe I'm just extra sexy because I feel like I walk
Extra
into
sexy.
It's that dad bod,
I feel
Gil.
like I walk into a gas station and half the ladies are like scoping me out, and I'm like, could you just please give me 500 on pump 17, please?
What I say is just give me, number 7 scratcher for I want 6 of them.
That's probably why they're not paying attention to you. They're like, this guy's one hope in life is he'll win the lottery. Well, we probably should wrap it up before our all pandemonium breaks loose.
I'm ready to cook the boil.
Yeah, we're doing crab boil. Good
Hey,
idea.
just putting this out there. If anyone wants to get in touch with Joel Soulsby, you can look up Sugar Nut Farms, Facebook,
And
Twitter, Instagram,
I'm
Twitch
not on any of
TV,
that. by the way.
SugarNutFarms.com.
I'm not on any of
None
that.
of that's available now. It might
No.
be available within the next 10 years when his trees are producing and you can direct order pecans to your doorstep. Just putting that out there.
Nah.
Solomon, is there anything you'd like to promote?
I like to promote pine nuts. I have no way of you contacting me, but I sell them if you want them.
If you happen to be driving through some of the small shithole towns in New Mexico and you see a lone pecan or pine nut stand parked on the side of the road outside of your local Walmart or gas station, swing by and ask for Solomon LeBaron, and you might just be surprised.
Look, just here's an interesting fact about pine nuts. If you eat enough of them, look this up on Google. If you eat enough of them, okay?
Oh my God, don't look that up on Google. Bye,
They're
everyone.
so good for your health.